Listen, you started it, so.
We ready to rock and roll? Cool.
I'm not.
All right, I bring to call to order our formal session on February 27th at 10 a.m. Carolina, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the audience that is here to make public comment? Seeing none, is there any online? Raise your virtual hand if you are. Seeing none, moving on. C is calendar session. This time is reserved for the review of the Commissioner's joint schedule if needed. Is there any corrections, additions? Nope.
I'm not
Commissioner?
going to the, I'm not here for the dinner next week, so I don't know if you guys are both.
Cog
the
dinner?
Yeah, I'm out for that one,
Okay.
so I don't think as far as next week goes, I don't think there's anything that we're all
Okay.
next weekend. I don't think there's a luncheon next Thursday at Family Place that I'm gonna try to make it to if after this meeting, depending on how long it goes. I don't know if you guys were invited as well, but
Thank you.
Did we want to put that on the calendar for any other?
I'll
commissioners?
email you later.
Okay.
Yep.
And maybe like they.
Yep.
Send it to whoever- who's your person?
Jessica, but
Jessica.
I wasn't sure if you guys were.
You
yeah.
can just send it to her and then she.
All right, we addressed public comment. E is department updates. We have none. F is work session. We have none. G is consent agenda. There's none. H is old business. There's none. Brings us to I, which is other business. I1 is consideration of the approval of ordinance 942 in the matter of amending the Yamhill County Dog Code, repealing board order 07-340, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date. The sheriff is in the audience if we have any questions.
I have none, thank you.
No?
Okay.
Yeah, sounds like we're ready to move.
Are we doing this as an emergency? Is that, okay.
All right.
In the matter of amending the Yamhill County Dog Code, repealing board order 07340, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date. In the matter of amending the Yamhill County Dog Code, repealing board order 07340, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date.
Do you want a motion?
Yep, so now the discussion. Motion to approve. Yeah, go for it.
I'll move approval.
Commissioner Sterrett moves approval. Is there any further discussion? Seeing
I don't believe
none.
I have any.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to I2, consideration of approval of ordinance 941 in the matter of amending the Yamhill County Parks Code, the Wheatland Boat Ramp Parking Regulation, and the Rogers Landing Park Fee Schedule, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date. We'll have discussion after. Go ahead. Ma'am, can you keep it quiet back there?
In the back.
If I wanted to remove one of these, is now the time?
Okay, so what we can do is I'll do a first reading and then open it up to discussion. And then You tell
Okay.
me everything you want to
Okay.
fix. Yeah. So I'm just gonna do the first reading here. Okay, unless there's objections to, okay. You're objecting and you want me to read the
No,
whole
no,
thing?
I
Okay.
just want plenty of time because I have a number of,
Perfect. Okay.
concerns.
So first reading only, in the matter of amending the Yamhill County Parks Code, the Wheatland Boat Ramp parking regulations, and the Rogers Landing Park fee schedule, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date.
Thank you.
thank you.
I got a fairly simple one right out of the gate. Yeah, Travis, go ahead and come on up. Thanks.
I have a few too. I didn't get a chance to have my meeting with Ken this week. so-
Okay, so mine's
so I
pretty simple. I'm
appreciate
going to get mine out of the way and then I may have a larger one after you guys make some comments. So mine is, in fact, I ran into Travis in the lobby there before I came in, and my concern is, and this goes back to kind of how dog control's been handled, is the fee schedule where it just sits there for decades and doesn't do anything for increasing. I'd like to pull at least that one port, either approve it the way it is, I'm okay, but I want it to immediately go back to the Parks Board for reconsideration or consideration of what those fees, the new fees should be, because they haven't been changed since 2005.
Yeah, 2005 for Rogers Landing fees.
And
Not that I found documentation on.
Travis, isn't there some sort of restriction on our ability to increase?
There is.
So I'll speak to that. So that's a yes and no. That fee is tied to a grant agreement that we have with the Oregon State Marine Board. That fee was originally set to in balance with the grant dollars we would receive at that point in time. In about a year ago, I had a conversation, very general conversation with the Oregon State Marine Board regarding the Rogers Landing fee. And at that point in time, they were in support of readdressing that fee and changing maybe the amount or what that potentially looks like. Maybe that moves to a general parking fee for the property, or it could be an increase to just the boat ramp launch fee.
Yeah.
So it
There's a
is
cap.
tied, but we do have the ability to have some conversations there.
Great.
There's, because there is a cap, and I'll just speak to it, and I'm sure things have changed, but I was the one who did the 2005. When we first implemented this. And so as part of that maintenance, I know they changed the name of it, but there's a maintenance grant that we get from the State Marine Board. And they do have caps on what you set as a launch fee. And so if you go above that cap, that you're basically penalized. In fact, I think it's like they'll take 25% off of what you get for those maintenance funds. And because of that project was built with grant funds, we have to run those fees through the State Marine Board, even to the state. So there's kind of that give and take that comes in, that if you raise the launch fee, then you're losing those grant funds. You're going to receive less of those grant funds.
What's
And
the cap before that triggers? Do you know?
it used to be like, I think we were right at the number, the launch fee that I established, this was 20 years ago, was just below triggering a 25% loss in revenue. And we did that analysis at the time because of the launch fee revenue. It's seasonal in nature. It's
Mhm.
based on usage. The grant is not, so that's and that's why we were very careful with trying to balance the two, because launch fees could have a summer to where it's bad weather, or you see reduction in usage and you're behind on that.
Right.
And so trying to balance that loss of grant revenue with the income that comes in with the launch fees. you have
I
to look at
obviously
both.
don't want to hurt ourselves doing this, but definitely have a conversation about it. It's been way too long.
Yeah.
And I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be something written in to where we can come up to that cap without it affecting.
I thought there was negotiations in the past, and that's why I thought at least one time, I thought after me, that there may have been discussions about doing an update, because I know State Marine Board, years ago, we were lobbying pretty hard for them to take a closer look because the maintenance fees do not, or the maintenance grant does not cover the operational costs for the
Right.
site. And so we were lobbying years ago with State Marine Board to take a second look at those caps because they need to right size it. And
Yep.
so I'll look for Travis to kind of provide updates.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a good relationship with the Oregon State Marine Board, and we can open up those discussions again and see what that looks like and inform them to kind of our circumstances in particular and see what they're willing to do and
Yep.
discuss.
And then bring it for the Parks Board. And
Correct.
just-
Does it
Yeah.
make sense to, with the code as drafted, to take the fee schedule and make that an exhibit? And so then that one could be amended or updated without necessarily updating the entire code. So you would have that as an attachment. So then that would be along the lines, what the chair would like to do is
Okay.
have the discussion with that. And then periodically, when we need to do an update to the fee schedule, we wouldn't have to necessarily update the entire code. We'd just update
I
the
like that.
exhibit. I don't know. I'm looking at council to see if that's possible.
So.
It is a
which
little
then brings up
unusual to
another
put a-
conversation about the dog control fee schedule
What's
that
that?
we just approved.
Yeah. I'll be honest, it was a little unusual to have a separate ordinance just for Rogers Landing Park fee schedule code. What we can do is we can pull that out of this ordinance and then I guess we could add it to well, I don't want to overcomplicate things. Yes, we can take out, I mean, the whole ordinance or the whole code is about the fee. So it doesn't make sense to sort of make it an exhibit to itself. But we can figure something out so that we don't have a code specific to a fee schedule just for this one park. We can try to incorporate it into the parks code or something. What fees?
Well, because there's reservation.
There's special event fees that's new.
Yeah, correct. There are reservation fees for renting picnic shelters. And then there's that additional event fee.
So those are not in the code.
Correct, they're not.
Do you want them to be? Because I can add them.
I was just thinking that might be another option, is to have a complete fee schedule that maybe the codes point to. And so then when you're doing your review, you're doing a review of the entire fee schedule along the same lines we do for planning, the clerk, some of those others. But
Okay, so we're talking about two different things. So one would be more like the dog code, which has its fee attached to the code. And the other would be essentially part of the county's fee schedule.
no, it would still be,
You prefer the first option?
yeah.
Which is, did you say that's like the dog control one?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we've compartmentalized most of the other fee schedules, so we don't have a countywide fee schedule that we update. Usually when Ken comes forward, he
But
comes
those
forward.
other ones were not adopted via ordinance. That's the difference.
Okay.
So if we want to keep this in the ordinance land, then I can set it up like the dog code. The other option is however you get the fee schedules approved for department ones, which I think is probably just through a board order. would
Yeah,
be
it's
my
through a
guess.
board order.
So that is a decision. Not for me to make, but for the board. So would you rather have it look like the dog code, or would you rather have it set up like planning is set up?
So we're talking about three different options then?
No, just two. So one, it would be part of the code, so it would be adopted as an ordinance. And then the other one is, as I guess we've always done it for all the other departments, and it's adopted as a board order.
I want a board order.
Okay, well,
I'd
we
border it.
will get rid of the whole ordinance then, because that's what would effectively happen
This
Oh.
ordinance is specific to the one that was originally adopted in 2005 established the fee.
for Rogers Landing.
Okay.
We will
Do-
talk about this after, because I don't. know if
Okay, well,
everybody's
so
on the
let's
same
just push
page.
this off till next week
Yeah, I
then.
think-
Let's have,
We'll cut out the Rogers Landing piece. Yeah.
okay,
I think I need to walk through you guys separately,
Okay.
just exactly what the difference is.
Okay.
So I don't want to do that right now.
But while we're at it, I know
Yeah, I've got a couple of issues. I figure we might as well get these out now so they can be addressed. A couple of issues have to do with
under, what would that be, section 6? And I don't have the original page on that, but it has to do with, no person shall smoke or use tobacco in any form, in any, place, in any park. And that has to, smoking and tobacco are defined as cigarettes, cigarillos, cigars, clove, e-cigarettes, vaporizers, nicotine, it goes on, and it has smokeless tobacco, chew, and snuff. I think that's a bit overbroad and basically saying you cannot have, smokeless tobacco or chew or snuff or tobacco pouches if you're going to be in any of our parks. I think not only are we making it really onerous unnecessarily, I can understand not wanting people to smoke because of the fire danger. Again, that's going to be an enforcement issue, but I would say that that would be something that I think is a bit much.
I don't know if you want me to talk. So a lot of the new code sections under the prohibited conduct were provisions that I recommended to Travis based on my experiences with a different county that had a bit more robust park system than ours, and this was a problem. So it might not be such a problem here. So I don't want to speak for you, but if we want to take out some of these new provisions, that I have no issue with that.
So I did just a little bit of digging prior to this regarding the smoking. Several agencies across the state all have smoke-related prohibitions. They vary in scope and scale. What we have currently in here for this is very similar to what McMinnville Parks and Recs currently has. The state parks smoking policy, tobacco policy is similar to this, but with a few exceptions. CPRD, locally there in Newburgh, they have a smoking policy, but it's not as expansive as this one. So I personally don't have a problem with revisiting this and dialing it back a little bit, but across the Parks and Rec industry, if you will, having some sort of tobacco policy is becoming very common.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not falling into the trap of we're doing it the way everybody else does, because I can tell you when we look at some of the things going on at the state level, I certainly wouldn't want to say that we're going to be doing what they do, because it doesn't work and it's overreach. So I think if we're going to have our own code, we need to have our own code. And I think in terms of enforcement, let's have things we can enforce, and having somebody with chew is seems a bit much.
We
I-
can revisit this. I do want to get a clarification. Is the concern over I think generally speaking, in my experience, tobacco bans have to do with smoking. Nobody likes to be around smoke. Is that a concern, or is it mostly just,
I think-
go
Sorry,
ahead.
yeah,
No,
go
you
ahead.
go.
I think for me, the concern would be the litter of like a pouch or the butt. Obviously the fire piece as well, if you're smoking a cigarette or a cigar, but from a chew standpoint, just the littering of the pouches or a Zyn or those types of things. I think that's probably more where the heart of this comes from, that I would see if I was working. I don't want to pick that up.
So we have offensive littering laws, violations that could, be
Yeah.
chewing gum or something. I think we have to be really careful about putting things in there that are not only not enforceable, but seem to be a little bit on the ridiculous side.
Okay, I totally hear you, but so that we can come back with a better draft, I need to know where the line is for you. So are you thinking you would just want to get rid of that all entirely?
If you look at just the first, no person shall smoke or use tobacco in any form, in any place, in any park or park area, and just end it there and not go on and define it all, does it make it better?
No,
No.
because you're saying tobacco in any form. I mean, if you don't want people to smoke, I get it. Believe me, I get it. But when you start saying tobacco in any form, what about people with chewing Nicorette
Yeah.
or
Or-
nicotine patches
yeah,
or
yeah.
Zins or,
So
no smoking?
it's not that simple. I wish it was.
It's-
But
it's,
we can try to tailor this to smoking, things that give off smells, essentially, that will
Well-
cause a public nuisance.
Does littering cover this as well? I mean, if you're.
I think there's a separate section
Right.
here for littering. I don't think we would fit the definition of offensive littering. That's a little bit higher bar than a cigarette, but I think there is a provision in here that we added for just general litter, right?
Yes, yeah, I
Okay,
mean, like,
so
does
we
a
could cover
pouch or a
that.
Cigarette butt, does that?
Yeah.
Is littering covered under that? I mean, or-
It should be.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Then I would be more in the camp of Commissioner Starrett's point of view.
Okay.
I don't.
stick to just sort of like, it's affecting other people kind of a thing.
Yeah, the people around you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're spitting chew, obviously that could affect other people, but so could, again, how many rules and regulations for people who are being bad actors? Just offensive behavior, but anyhow.
I
don't
think
know.
we have enough. We can redraft that section and come back with different language that's maybe a little less strict.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah.
So do you want to send the whole thing back or
I
you want to
had-
piece this out or what?
Piece it out so that I know what to come back with.
Okay.
That
I
would be
have two
helpful
more.
for me.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yes.
sorry.
All right.
Well, and I'm also thinking with that too, because there's kind of two things we have to keep an eye on. There's the prohibition around tobacco use and smoking within facilities within the park versus general prohibition as well. So
We don't have that.
we don't have that,
No.
but then state law.
Yeah, that's true.
State law already covers, I
But it
mean,
doesn't
at the
cover
end of this one
parks,
was
buildings.
marijuana too, and
I-
state
I'm
law already
not saying
covers that.
parks in
so.
general. I'm talking about the facilities within a park, within a restroom, within a picnic shelter, within an enclosed, if we had an event center or, what, we don't have that, but I'm just doing my part to make it even more complicated for
Yeah.
you.
Much
I
appreciated.
think-
Did good.
I think Jody and I'll get back together and
Yeah.
revisit this and dial it way back, and then we'll bring it back for review.
Okay, the other thing I was wondering about, I'm looking at under 6050701 seizure of weapons. A parks manager, law enforcement officer, or other authorized person issuing a citation shall, and we know shall is not discretionary, it's mandatory, shall immediately take the weapon into possession. So a couple of things are a little concerning. Obviously, I think that should be left to law enforcement and not.
That would be my first call.
That would,
Yeah.
and so Sheriff, I don't know if you're tracking with this, but I don't think it's something that lay people are trained to do, is to take a weapon from an aggressive or person who's got a gun.
Anybody.
Anybody.
So I could touch that one. So that is an old provision. It used to say peace officer, which was not defined in the code itself. So we took out all the peace officer language and replaced it with park manager, law enforcement officer, or other authorized person. I can totally take out the parks manager piece. Here's the problem is it's tied to a citation. So you would no longer have if you ever cited somebody for having a BB gun, you couldn't do anything about it. So that's the catch. I could also just change it to may immediately take the weapon instead of shall. I could do that.
I'm going to ask the sheriff to weigh in here on that. Even the may might be asking a bit too much of our parks manager or someone.
I might have to ask if I can speed read because I actually haven't looked at this particular provision.
Is this a best practice kind of ask as well? Like, would you, Travis, would you just call for a deputy to come with you if that was the case? If you, I mean, I think that.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, if I ever came across that situation, my first call is always law enforcement, whether it's
course.
local PD, sheriff's department. I would never engage. I'm not necessarily trained in anything like that, so it would be foolish to even attempt that. I think this really, like Jody already stated, this was cleaning up the language for this particular component.
I suppose theoretically, if you came across somebody with a BB gun in a park and you wanted to cite them, you could cite them and you could also have law enforcement come to take care of that seizure piece. That's, I guess, an option.
Sure, if I think I'm on like page 44, I think.
Yeah, I just reviewed it and it does make sense to me because this is specifically in relation to somebody that's doing some prohibited conduct like hunting or discharging some sort of a weapon within the park, like a BB gun, pellet gun, bow and arrow, slingshot. So it is directly tied to the issuance of a citation for prohibited conduct, and it would be really under our evidentiary procedures. You know, if we're arguing that somebody's committed a violation and we're collecting the evidence related to that, I think that that would kind of go hand in hand, that it would be up to the citation issuing individual, whether they're collecting a particular item as a piece of evidence that someone committed a violation.
But in terms of how many civilians are trained in, you know, weapon retention or safe transfer of a firearm or, I mean, obviously you're not going to be carrying a loaded firearm, so you'd need to clear the gun. And I don't know that that's something we want to put on a parks manager or someone else who doesn't do this regularly, unless they're trained to, and we just make that part of their.
I'm gonna just have Travis start coming to
No.
training.
And
I was gonna say.
Nope, not interested.
So I'm guessing when this language was first drafted, it was taken probably under the context of a park ranger, not a park manager. I can take out park manager and we can just do a workaround. If you ever have a situation where you, somebody has violated that specific code where they have, whatever it is, to let off a gun in the middle of a park and you need to cite them, just make sure that you call law enforcement because you will not have the authority to take the weapon.
Yep.
So we can do that as a workaround. Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that one.
Yeah, I just think the problem is because I think our first instinct, when you read that, you're thinking firearms. Where I think the intent.
It's a
the
weapon
whole-
of any kind,
it's-
yeah.
Weapon is a pretty wide definition, and I mean, there could be some cases that,
It theoretically could be a giant stick.
correct. Yeah.
But maybe I can rework the language to clarify if it's I think there's a definition of
Is there a
gun in
class of
statute
weapon?
and just rely on that definition to sort of give you some authority, but not all.
Perfect.
Okay, we can work that out.
One more.
I think that it's somewhat self-explanatory because it talks about that it shall be placed into evidence at the appropriate law enforcement agency. Nobody's going to be able to put something in there unless they're law enforcement. So it's not like the parks manager is going to be able to show up and say, hey, I need to log this into evidence. That has to be an employee, a sworn employee of the sheriff's office or Newburgh Police Department.
But it said shall immediately take the weapon into possession I'm thinking the understanding is their possession, not possession for evidence.
Well, the
No,
next sentence is the weapon shall be placed into evidence. So they're taking it from the individual and then it's supposed to go into evidence at a law enforcement agency. So I think just simple chain of custody. If you're talking about actually collecting evidence, it just needs to be somebody that's sworn law enforcement.
Yep.
I think he could still issue a citation as long as he's not collecting an item.
Honestly, and we've talked about this, a lot of our parks codes have similar language in statute that would be a misdemeanor. And if it's a law enforcement officer responding, they're more likely to rely on state statute than our code to cite because it'll be a tougher punishment. But we doubled up because we wanted all the options we could have, different standards and all that, different legalities. Yeah, so that's something else to think about. If it's a law enforcement officer that's citing them, I doubt that they would cite under our code. They would rely on state law and established case law and everything that has to do with illegal search and seizures.
glad you were here. I have one more, and that has to do with.
Sheriff, if you could stay for a second.
I'm sorry. Abusive language. I think. that
Which one are
is
you looking at?
Section 6L.
Oh,
Above, I don't have the,
Six
It-
L.
Yeah. It says no person shall use
Oh, I
abusive,
see.
threatening,
Okay.
obscene, or decent language gestures in a manner which causes a public nuisance. A violation of this provision is punishable. I talked to Jody about this morning. I also talked to the sheriff about it and Travis. Sheriff, do you want to just kind of give me a rough rundown on kind of your thoughts on this one? And
Glad you showed up.
So it is interesting, anytime you're getting into any sort of regulation around people's speech or conduct. I think what it really boils down to is these properties are owned by the county. They're a park facility, and the county has the ability to, they're not saying you can't say a certain thing. They're just saying you can't say a certain thing while on this property, just like any other property owner can dictate what they have as acceptable behavior for use of that particular facility. So it is challenging in some respects, but it's also very commonplace. I think to your point, it's a pretty standard park rule that, people have to have some degree of social decorum when they're utilizing a public facility. And it's not an issue for people to be asked to either refrain from engaging in that conduct or not utilize the facility, just like with any other county building. We would not allow somebody to engage in verbally abusive conduct towards somebody at the front desk of any of the county departments. So, I can see where there's concern when you start talking about, we don't want people engaging in certain types of conduct, but we're just saying that could potentially cause you to be asked to leave this particular property.
Is there a definition of abusive? Is there anything in statute?
So I talked to Kit a little bit about this. So that language came again from my old county, and it was in the context of some patrons who were, it was a domestic violence situation. And neither of the parties wanted to press charges. And then there was really no other option. So this was at a campground, and so they stayed, and there was nothing that the park host could do about it. So he asked me specifically for some sort of language to add to give the park rangers some authority in situations like that. I think the problem isn't the definition of abuses. Maybe we need to define a public nuisance to be a little bit higher threshold. So no person shall use this kind of language. And it says, in a manner which causes a public nuisance. We can define what that means. It can be a high standard, like there's reasonable fear of safety, something to that effect, so that it's, from a legal perspective, that is sort of what you would train Travis and any responding deputy to sort of look for. This is the threshold at which cussing becomes a threat to life and safety. It's a slippery slope, but like Sam said, it's our property, and we can choose what sort of standards we expect from our patrons within limitations.
does that cover what you have?
I have one,
Okay.
and it's a little bit more of a clarifying question because I don't know the process in this yet, but I noticed that we are taking out a fine for the Class A through E, I believe. I think it's under 6.0508 on page 44. And is that, for example, if I want to leave my camper at Rogers Landing, it would be something around. That was just the Class A violation is exclusion for 365 days. If I want to leave my camper at Rogers Landing, and because I don't want it anymore, I can't sell it. That's a pretty cheap way to get rid of it, right? Now, am I also going to get fined from the sheriff's department in addition to that for abandoning my vehicle or something, or is that literally just the case? I guess what I'm asking is, we've taken away any sort of fee and they were pretty minimal to begin with, but which I appreciate. But are we taking away that ability to, 72 hours is class E? Okay, I can't go to the park for 3 days. Not that big a deal. Is there a reason that we would want to have another arm to make it hurt a little bit more, or make it, like I'll just go to a different park, or who's going to know if I go to the park?
So
Something like that.
the-
That was just a concern.
Yeah.
Couple of clarifying questions.
Totally makes sense. So the exclusions are in addition to the fee amount set up
Okay.
under section 9.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I
so
would
it,
have asked this.
yeah, so
different
you
time.
can do, if somebody abandons a vehicle, I mean, there's lots of options, but you could theoretically cite them under the provision in the Parks Code that says you can't abandon a vehicle in our park and exclude them up to whatever it was, 72 hours.
Yeah.
So it's not just you can do one or the other, you can do both at your discretion,
Yeah.
at the manager's discretion.
And then is it in some of these, if it is in addition to whatever the law is from the
Mhm.
sheriff's department, would also get a cite, for example, if I leave my camper, I abandoned my camper at the
At the
Rogers
park.
Landing.
Mhm.
That's the parks code, right? And what I would get fined. So I don't remember what it is. If I leave my camper at Rogers
Mhm.
Landing, it's a class, I don't remember if it's a class A or B or
Me
whatever.
neither,
Let's
but-
call it a class A.
Okay.
$500 and 365 days suspension. Am I also going to get fined from the sheriff's department? Because again, that's still pretty cheap.
Well, now you're sort of, well, we're getting into like double jeopardy territory.
Yeah.
The max fines are in statute.
Hmm.
So if like, that is a great question in that some of these prohibited conducts, the class that Travis and I think you ran this past the Parks Board, right? Set those at, it might not be what you want. It might be that you want to have a higher class violation for certain things like leaving your RV at Rogers Landing, in which case that the higher the class, the
Mhm.
higher the fine.
Right.
So what you can do is go through all of our prohibited conducts, and because under each prohibited conduct section, it says
There's a
this is a
class,
class
yeah,
blank
yeah.
violation. Go through and decide if you think that that is an appropriate class for each type of prohibition.
Yeah.
And if you think we overshot it, and maybe it should be like a lower fine or vice versa. I don't think we're married to any of those classes. I think that was sort of, we took that as, from what I remember, we looked at some other examples and we're like, okay, this seems pretty fair based on what other parks set their violation classes at,
Yeah,
right?
correct. I think you in particular did some research there and tried to put us kind of in that.
In that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As I was looking at most of those, most of them look to be pretty in line,
Mhm.
except for that.
That one?
That one was kind of like, oh,
I
that
will
seems pretty cheap
Make a note of
and
that.
not very slapped on the, it's a slap on the wrist kind of a thing. And it's still not my problem anymore.
Good point. I'm going to make a note to look for.
And maybe I'm missing something from a law perspective or something, but
Well, it's actually something we frequently run into, and it's not generally RVs, it's
Yeah.
boats that get dumped at Rogers Landing. And we wind up, the vast majority of those, we do pursue those under a state
Yeah.
crime of offensive littering near a waterway, which is a misdemeanor offense, not a violation.
okay.
And that comes with a maximum $6,250 fine. And so it does give more tools because not every case, fits nicely into
That,
one remedy.
okay.
And so it is nice to have some additional tools to be fair, given the circumstance, but there are other criminal pathways that we can address problematic conduct specifically at Rogers because it is near a waterway, or Dayton Landing or Wheatland or
Okay.
whatever.
But if I'm just at, I don't know, all the our parks, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but if it's not near a waterway and I wanted to leave my car that doesn't work anymore, in the parking lot, then,
It depends. I mean, there's generally in Oregon, a waterway not too far away from
Sure.
anywhere. So
okay, so that might just
yeah,
be defined, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, good. Well, I like that.
Cool.
Thank you for, it's just clarification. And that's.
All
my-
right, so we're gonna push this off then.
Yeah,
Okay.
give us more than a week though, please.
Sorry.
Oh. It was a lot of revamping and we knew that there was more work to be done, but we needed to get it to this point, so.
Yep.
We wanted input and
Yep.
this is how the process works.
Cool,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
A question about process, because you already did the first reading and had the discussion and it's still open. Would we come back with a second reading?
No,
Or is there?
it'll be an
sti-
all new ordinance with a new first and second.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it'll be no action.
No action on this one.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sheriff. Moving on to I3, consideration to authorize Public Works to purchase a 2025 Ford F-550 from Landmark Ford of Tigard, Oregon, under the state bid contract in the amount of $72,136.44. I would make a motion to approve. Is there any further discussion?
None.
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to I4, consideration of approval of a board order approving a road vacation without a public hearing, Public Works docket number RV-3-2024. Is there, do we have a motion? I would make a motion to approve this. Is there any further discussion?
None.
None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And looks like we got one more road vacation. I5, consideration of approval of a board order approving a road vacation without a public hearing. Public Works docket number RV-2-2024. I would also make a motion to approve on this one. Is there any further discussion?
None.
None for me.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to I6, consideration of a letter to be submitted to Senator Ron Wyden regarding cuts to Medicare physician payments, brought to us by Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just some notes, CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare had implemented almost a 3% cut in the physician payment scheduled for this year, for 25. And that would actually started January 21st. But this comes after a almost 1.7 pay cut in 24 and a 2% drop in 23. So on top of what physicians are being not paid, and this is an additional cut that's really going to present some problems. We know that we've got seniors who can't get in to see a physician, and I just would hope that we can try this again. We've tried it once before, and I would just ask that the board support this. So I would move approval.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would just going to add that, I think I had some stats on my phone somewhere, but, I think 74 million Americans use this, service. And I think and half of them are children. And so I think it's extremely important, and I back you 100%.
This is Medicare, not Medicaid.
Oh, sorry.
So,
sorry.
yeah, this is just for our seniors, and they're,
Just seniors, sorry.
they're struggling.
Yeah, I was just reading through stats on both of them, and I had the notes on my phone, and I didn't, yeah,
No worries. Cool.
couldn't find it
No
really
worries.
quick.
So we-
I was trying to pull them up really quick, so I didn't screw up, but
No
I screwed up
worries.
anyway.
Yeah.
But thank you. Either way, I support it 100% on
Appreciate
both.
that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Stewart, for bringing that forward. Moving on to I7 is consideration of a letter to be submitted in opposition to Senate Bill 916 regarding unemployment insurance benefits for employees unemployed due to a labor dispute and declaring an emergency, also brought to us by Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. Because this has an emergency clause, this would actually go into effect upon passage, and that would impact our current budget. We don't have any idea what this would wind up costing, and I think it would have a significant impact because basically public employers, which the county is one, we cannot simply raise property taxes whenever we want to accommodate an increase cost to our budget. And that would mean, unfortunately, we would likely have to cut services. So I think this is, Senate Bill 916 basically has a pretty low bar for people to be on unemployment. It could create some serious impact. So I'm asking the board to sign on to this just in terms of what we're facing at the county level.
And I know Polk County's also doing this, going through the same motions to have board approval to oppose 916 also, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure a number of other counties as well, because it really, we don't even know the impact. And I don't know that it actually, what it does is it kind of doesn't discourage, but it almost encourages, going out on strike. And I think we've seen that here. It can be pretty, impactful.
Comments?
No, I think I agree with you. I haven't fully delved into this one yet, but as it pertains to us and our budget and so on, I definitely agree with you. I don't like taking away tools from us to be able to run our budget, and so.
Thank you.
I'm there.
Cool. All right. Did you make a motion?
I did.
Okay. Motion's been made. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to J, public hearings. There is none, which brings us to K, announcements. Commissioner King, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let me pull them up really quick. It's County College this last week, and a lot covered in these things. Long days, but very informational. Berkeley Town Hall was very well attended, and I very much, in the local leaders meeting, I very much appreciated your comments, Chair, and the rest of the cities spoke up about their projects that they're really hoping, and just the way the discussion worked and around working together, especially around the roads in McDougal Corner. It was very encouraging to see kind of everybody on the same page, advocating for a lot of the same stuff. So thank you for leading that. Had my first little orientation with Lindsay Manfred at HHS of, I think there's 6 or so of them planned, huge, lots to learn. So very excited about that. Last night, attended the Civility Project. I had to leave a little bit early, get kids stuff, but Mayor of Newburgh and gentleman Rick Mathias hosted and just had a discussion about more national politics and how and why, where we're at, which I thought was really great. And then some big news last week, Congresswoman Salinas's office called me and had invited me to go to the State of the Union. She gets one ticket and invited me, so I'm pretty excited. The federal requests submitted by Yamhill County cities in 2024 are approved in the 2025 budget, total 11.4 million. Yamhill County cities are currently have 5.4 million in request pending for budget approval, but have been approved through committee. These requests include the Barbara Roberts Career and Technical Education Center. You guys, thank you. The Carlton Sewer Collection Pipe Replacement and Newburgh Water Plant Covering Project. And I get just to make sure that this, I want to make sure that you guys know that there's no cost to the county, right? And I get to spend one-on-one time, right? There's a lot, that it's not just the 15 minutes that you would normally get if you're in DC. So I get to advocate for a lot of those projects that, we talked about at that local leaders meeting. So I'm very much excited about this, and yeah, so I'll be out for a lot of next week, but I'll have my phone and email and all that fun stuff. So I'll be here for this meeting back in time, but yeah.
Fantastic.
That's it.
Cool.
The big one for last, the finale.
Commissioner Sterrett?
Housing Authority retreat and board meeting and an update on some of the housing rehab grants. $500,000 for the McMinnville CDBG. There was $750,000 throughout the year for Oregon Healthy Homes Grant Program. And they were awarded $310,000 from the Community Excise Tax Grant. So that's helpful. Also, we got an update on Stratus. And if you look across the street from the Housing Authority building, you'll see just how far along the project is
Yeah.
ahead of schedule. And we got to see some of the drone videos that showed the progress. It was really pretty dramatic. So basically, they're looking at August of 25 to begin taking applications. And then in November, they'll start their first building occupancy. So it's pretty exciting. It's quite a project. It's really nicely
It
done.
is. It definitely changes the landscape when
Yep.
you're driving by now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they were already building apartments in behind all that. And now that you see that
Right.
whole complex come together, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've done a good job. So kudos to the Housing Authority. Also CPRD board meeting tonight. There's going to be an executive session. They will be, from what I understand, discussing our conversation about the park and what they might do with that. And also Local Government Advisory Committee is tomorrow with OHA, so I'll be at that. That's it.
Awesome. All right, Thursday, we had Fair Board meeting, discussed potentially raising some of the front row seats for the concert tickets. Discussed admission pricing. I think we voted to keep that stable. Possibility of developing some early bird packages that we'd put together that would have like admission tickets, concert tickets, just different aspects to package deals, see if we can get some more pre-sales for the fair and rodeo. Ambassador applications close tomorrow, the 28th. So if there's any kids out there that are juniors or seniors that would like to apply for that, that's closing down real quick. That is $1,000 scholarship and a really fun summer for all the parades, and you
On the
get
back
to
of your
you
pickup?
get to come before different councils or board commission meetings and practice your speech ability. So it's a pretty cool deal. Sunday was the Merkley Town Hall, as Commissioner King mentioned. We had the opportunity to be at the local leader roundtable, and over the last few years since I've been commissioner, I didn't bog them down with my asks that I've had because Gustavo, he's our regional director, and so I've always given him. He's got my running list of projects, whether it's radio towers or fairs or safety upgrades for different intersections or courthouse. It's a fairly long list, but my main focus for that roundtable that we had was to try to convince people to not get bogged down with maybe national news and be more focused locally on the stuff that we all know that we can agree on, whether it's funding for mental health, funding for our, fire, police, sheriff, all of our local, public safety departments. I ended on, because it was only within 2 days removed of, somebody losing their life at McDougal intersection. I'm like, we can all agree that we want safer roads for our area. So I thought it went over well. Hillary Malcolmson is just absolutely hilarious because right out of the gate when Senator Merkley's like, well, who wants to kick us off? It was literally a nanosecond, and you could see everybody's head in the room just turn immediately to Mayor Malcolmson. It was just absolutely phenomenal. She kicked us off, and she has, with her project, which is a sewer lift station that I will not use her words that she used, but
Not here.
It went bad. And so she's requesting funding for that, which I also signed a letter of support for funding for them for that project also. highway interchange. Oh, also the Lafayette and 18 interchange. I'm kind of trying to steer that conversation from not just McDougal, but I mean, Lafayette Highway and 18 is only within what, 2.5 miles of McDougal. It really should be just those projects need to start getting lumped together. And then, working with ODOT and making sure that they fully well know what the issues are. And our own sheriffs put together emails, when we had a pretty long run of wrecks there, some were weekly, but for sure monthly, of issues that we're having. And I'm going to work in conjunction with him when we get some updated stats here. I put together a letter. I wish I could have brought it before the board, but we were just running a little bit too late from the Parkway Committee, and it was a letter of support for funding specifically for McDougal interchange. So I signed that as myself, but I think I'm going to revamp that letter as more of a general letter to not just Senators Merkley and Wyden, but I think it's going to be more of just state elected officials and federal elected officials for our region based on these two intersections. And then I'll bring it back before us. And if you guys approve of it, that maybe we could have a letter signed by us and also the sheriff.
Yeah.
100%.
Thank
So,
you.
Anyway, got that going. Tuesday, it was very interesting. SEDCOR invited me to their table. It was a breakfast at the SVN Economic Update Forum for our region. And a couple takeaways. One is we made the top three list of office buildings purchased. So for our region, one was us personally for the county, and the other one was the fire district for the TTR building. The reason they brought those up is very interesting that the numbers are actually climbing now for needs for office space because a lot of employers are starting to demand their employers come back to work in person because they're starting to see the effects of actually that in-person touch of interaction of employees actually in the workspace. So it's actually on the uptick, and Salem's looking for office space. So that was kind of.
I will say Business Oregon at County College did give Yamhill County a big shout out for that we punch above our weight for economic development. So I thought that was really cool.
TTR building, McMinnville City Council. I was also Tuesday night, mainly public comments on the proposed revamping of the Quarry Park. That was pretty interesting. They took up their so McMinnville City Council allocates 40 minutes to public comment, and they limit you to 4 minutes apiece, and they max that out. So there was still a lot of people that wanted to give comments on the Quarry Park turning into more of a mountain bike or biking park. And a lot of the neighbors are upset about that. So there was a lot of comment on that. A few comments on the proposed recreation center in favor of it. Wednesday night, me and my wife attended the community conversations event that the Newburgh mayor was at. That was very interesting. It's definitely, when you roll in the door, it's, hey, what are your not necessarily political beliefs, but if you're trying to find people that would be the opposite of what your thoughts would be on a certain national issue. And so they try to have this blend at a table. And so me and my wife were at one, and it's pretty interesting. You're sitting there, you listen to somebody's concerns, and you're like, I hear your concerns. And then you express your concerns. And it's just an interesting way to have a conversation on national issues that are very hot topics. In the end, it was, my wife actually brought it up, and it was more down the roads of what I brought up at the Merkley conversation, because when I left the roundtable at for the leaders at the town hall for Merkley, when you actually get into the town hall, it's actually very frustrating when you get into that full environment.
Mm-hmm.
And people of my parents' generation that taught me to be respectful and to listen to them boo at certain topics was very concerning. Anyway, so I think a lot of the people that maybe were at that Merkley Town Hall,
A lot of them were your
benefit.
parents' generation too, I think.
Yeah, they would have benefited from this community conversations that Mayor Rossacker was at. So anyway, thought it was interesting. Don't forget, chat with the chair next Thursday, Yamhill County Campus, building 6 to 7 PM, Hood Conference Room.
They do the civility project. They're usually around once a month. And it's not usually that busy, but I've been to
So
several.
this
of
was
them.
the second one that I actually saw a announcement for, and I've been to 2 of them. And the problem is it's a good crowd already, it seems like, and so they always go over well. I mean, everybody's already civil. You can have a civil conversation. It's those one-offs that you're walking, down the street or somebody behind a keyboard. You can, it's just, that's really where we have issues that hopefully society can figure out some way to address that, because social media really puts gasoline on it. So anyway, that's all I got. We adjourn right at 11 a.m.